Tens of thousands filled St. Peter's Square. The Argentine flag was folded carefully next to a recognizable photograph. Maria Elena Bergoglio gripped her will in the chapel, shaking as she read the final lines. "I leave no material fortune, but I leave you an unfathomable treasure." The family's reaction captivated the world, but the will's contents were unknown. They were crying for what they had realized, not over money lost. What did Pope Francis leave behind that caused his relatives to cry at his funeral? Jorge Mario Bergoglio was born in Flores, a working-class suburb of Buenos Aires. His Italian immigrant family was neither affluent nor poor, yet everything in the house had to be saved. Father was a railway accountant, mother a modest, conscientious housewife. Jorge, the oldest of 5 children, was used to taking charge early on. His boyhood was unlike millions of others in Buenos Aires, but he always listened when someone was distressed, even a stranger. Jorge loved football and music as a teen. He loved San Lorenzo and played street football with buddies. Even though he studied hard, he never thought he would become a priest. After high school, he studied chemical engineering and worked in a lab. Many don't know that he made extra money as a nightclub bouncer and family cleaner. Jorge's youth was about independence, exploration, and making a living like other boys. The turning point was 1958, when Jorge was 21. After a fateful confession in a modest church, he felt deeply moved. Nobody compelled him to be religious. However, his mother strongly opposed it. However, Jorge joined the Jesuits, ending all secular avenues. He became a priest in 1969. In 1973, during political unrest in Argentina, he became Jesuit provincial. This terrible time saw the military administration kidnap and torture clergymen, intellectuals, and dissidents. Jorge was accused and criticized, but he learnt a lot about silence, patience, and standing firm. He became Buenos Aires in 1998. He refused to move into the Episcopal Palace and instead lived in a humble apartment in a residential area. He cooked, did laundry, and took the bus. Local cops termed him the bishop everyone saw on the metro. Jorge kept his lifestyle after becoming a cardinal in 2001. He took one tiny suitcase to the Vatican. In the penultimate round of the 2005 conclave, he withdrew as Pope candidate. After Benedict XVII resigned in 2013, Jorge Mario Bergoglio became Pope Francis I, the first Southern Hemisphere, Latin American, and Society of Jesus Pope. The name Francis, after St. Francis of Assisi, who gave up his money to serve the poor, was the first obvious choice. From then on, the Pope changed. No Vatican apartments, red leather shoes, or sparkling robes. He drove a Fiat 500 and lived in Casa Santa Marta. Many thought this simplicity was contrived, but his Buenos Aires neighbors say he lived the same way for decades. Francis did not impress with simplicity. It was his nature. From Flores to the Vatican, decisions violated social norms. Jorge Mario Bergoglio sacrificed money, rank, comfort, adulation, and even quiet. Each step cost him, and the only thing he kept was the reason he entered the chapel at 21. First and foremost, the notion that life for others is everything. In his first year, he harshly criticized lavishly living clerics as spiritually lost. In a city where the needy begged, Francis would not travel in a luxurious car for comfort. Not a rhetorical statement, supported by action. He ordered Vatican financial organizations to be audited thoroughly, added anti-money laundering laws. His demands included unprecedented public financial reporting. The moral viewpoint Francis takes on global concerns is increasingly essential. He combines his papacy with his global responsibility. He issued Laudato Si in 2015, urging mankind to reevaluate its relationship with nature. The declaration targeted all humanity, not just Catholics. Francis called the globe our home and warned that environmental degradation was moral, not scientific. People who choose profit over accountability hurt the poor first. He subsequently wrote Fratelli Tutti, a manifesto advocating religious, ethnic, and ideological brotherhood. He said conflict stems from distrust and lack of communication, not differences. Muslim and Orthodox officials applauded the document, which helped mend centuries-old divides. He issued Dilexit Nos in 2024, the first pope to seriously criticize technology and AI. Francis worried about machines replacing humans and losing morality in an algorithm-run future. He called it a moral silence crisis. A future pope may view these documents as Francis's will, not a legal document hidden in a Vatican safe, but a collection of values created publicly over a decade of church leadership. Francis told journalists in private that he didn't have a bank account. "I don't own a home, but I know my legacy." He said it without pride, like a man who knows the implications of his decision. A pope's refusal to possess, pass property to relatives, and let the church become a black money cesspool provides a moral test for future generations. Francis did not name them treasures, but Maria Elena and her relatives understood after reading the paperwork. It was understood. They were his only legacy. Something ineffable, unfathomable, that made them cry at his death, because his brother lived as he stated. He died without being accused of betraying his beliefs. Pope Francis had 4 siblings, but near the end of his life, he only spoke to his younger sister, Maria Elena Bergoglio, who lived in Argentina with her 2 children. The Pope's modest family was rarely in the news during his decade. Nothing suggested they utilized their power for personal advantage. No evidence suggested Vatican funding. Francis aggressively maintained this. Years ago, he called his sister twice a month. Calls were not religious, not Vatican policy. Food, weather, and "can you still walk" were common topics. Francis once urged his bodyguards not to record or log his house calls. He believed that if every family talk became history, I would no longer be family. Maria Elena never practiced religion. She lived a typical life in Buenos Aires' outskirts as a school administrator. She was the only family member to directly question Jorge once he became pope. "Am I still your brother or a Vatican member? I am Jorge, as long as you keep my number," he said. Francis published his memoirs, Hope, in 2025, including a little chapter about Maria Elena. "My sister wanted to make sure I remembered who I was, not learn more." Pope Francis rarely mentions his relatives in official books because much of his life is a story without a family. No camera caught Maria Elena during the funeral. She retreated to family pews. She read a handwritten will that day that listed 3 items Francis requested his family to uphold. First, not to accept money, gifts, or nominal work from his name-using organizations. 2, not to publish memoirs, letters, or personal images for profit. 3, to continue the family's lifestyle without expecting special favors. Many find those 3 lines unpleasant. Maria Elena saw them as Francis' way of honoring his last value, not using respect. She briefly informed the journalists after the funeral that he left us nothing to divide but something to honor. Francis's 2 nephews, Maria Elena's sons, have never attended a Vatican event. They avoid interviews, media, and Bergoglio opportunities. According to friends, they were told that Uncle Jorge was not famous from childhood. He undertakes exceptional work in special conditions. Vanity does not drive this. The surviving family members resolved to let Francis live out his papacy without familial expectations. This contrasts with prominent families in politics and religion, where members might become satellites of the central power. For Francis, relatives are bulwarks, not extensions. Principles were his legacy, a strategy to avoid taking advantage. The attitude of staying away from the halo. They wept because he left just those principles, not because of money loss or disappointment, but because they knew that the family did not offer them privileges, but a tougher responsibility to purify the memory of a guy who lived as he claimed. Integrity cost him. The Chilean sexual abuse crisis was his first major setback. Francis first defended a bishop accused of concealing up abuse in 2018, claiming he saw no evidence. The statement was instantly criticized. Catholic groups demanded transparency after scores of victims came forward. Francis apologized, ordered an independent investigation, and accepted the resignation of all Chilean bishops. He struggled to recover his faith. For many, it was when he lost his integrity. The socially unpopular decisions Francis made had him fighting hard to keep them. In 2023, he blessed same-sex couples, drawing criticism on both sides. Conservatives claimed he violated church doctrine. He did not accept same-sex marriage. Therefore, progressives argued he did not go far enough. No press conference or text revisions were made by Francis. He simply said, "Everyone deserves love." His Vatican reforms hit sensitive regions. Finances, he banned dodgy investments, liquidated foundations, accused of oligarch ties, and decisively abolished senior cardinals' financial immunity. He was isolated by his behaviors. According to Il Messaggero, a number of cardinals surreptitiously tried to force him to resign, alleging poor health. Francis continued to work, but many of his closest associates resigned or were replaced. On radical social media platforms, conspiracy theories have surfaced, claiming Francis is hiding assets and living in poverty to hide his power. One unconventional news source nicknamed him a white-hatted snake. Unsubstantiated charges have proliferated, especially in conservative areas that reject his social agenda. International politics also causes tensions. Francis publicly called the U.S.-Mexico border wall un-Christian in 2016, putting him at odds with U.S. President Trump. He now faces a right-wing media onslaught. He still stands by his remark. Instead, he says religion doesn't erect walls. The pricing was more than bad. Being questioned by the system he led was lonely. The one who tries to fix problems is the most opposed, Francis informed a trusted priest. The priest's diary corroborated the observation, which was never made public. Francis appears to be a beloved leader worldwide. Many in the Vatican are displeased with his reforms. Francis understands and accepts, because he knows that avoiding conflict will only leave a legacy of compromise. The light legacy. No one was in St. Peter's Square that night. People waited silently for hours without a program, organizers, or guides. Only illumination from tens of thousands of lifted hands illuminated the ancient stone walls. Some carried Pope Francis photos. Others merely have his handwritten notes. Live as you believe was the night's mantra. From Europe to South America, Africa to little Catholic communities in Asia, parishes are organizing memorial services. The interesting thing is that many of the celebrations are from people, not churches. Rio de Janeiro janitors lit lights and recited Laudato Si at a sidewalk chapel. Nairobi students camped on campus, reading Fratelli Tutti in English. These visuals don't need ecclesiastical guidance. They occur quietly and authentically. Some disagreed with Francis's decisions, but many believed in his legacy of unconditional kindness and compassion. In an increasingly divided world of ideology, politics, and technology, Francis's legacy is undefined. Living slowly, clearly, and for others is the decision. He answered, "I have no desire to leave something excellent. I only want to be remembered if heard." Maria Elena read the words on the last page of her funeral reading. A man who never took center stage ended with a graceful conclusion. Years after his death, researchers will count Francis's rule. How many documents, how many financial reforms, how many internal matters were handled. Most individuals who met him remember him for something other than his policies. He shook hands, bowed, and didn't hide behind formal distance. "I was about to bow to him the first day he arrived," said a Santa Marta guest house employee. "Call me Jorge," he said. "Both work here." Details like this make Francis last longer than any sermon, although the publications don't mention them. His legacy cannot be divided, measured, or transmitted. Not in a bank. The will isn't legal. No market value. However, it is evident in how individuals change after meeting him, how his relatives support his values, and how the impoverished feel cherished when he arrives without ceremony. Maria Elena didn't talk after the burial. She resumed her Buenos Aires routine. When interviewed by a foreign journalist, she answered merely, "We are not mourning a pope, we mourn a brother." The toughest thing is not to accept his death, but to hold on to his beliefs in a rapidly changing world. Late in the service, there was no music, not familiar hymns. Only a recording played. Francis speaks clearly and softly. "I leave you with the belief that goodness exists, in Vatican City or on the streets. Pope Francis may be remembered for what he sacrificed to survive. The narrative of the treasure that made his family cry is about how a person lives, so his family doesn't feel like they lost, but has to continue. Leave a remark if you find something interesting in his life. We want your feedback. Please share and subscribe if you enjoyed this video to be updated on future excellent tales. Your patience is appreciated.